Hi guys, MrRoflWaffles here. This is going to be a guide for you to get to a high round easily on farm survival in Black Ops 7 Zombies. We're going to break this down into the early rounds of the game, some general tips around just high rounds in Black Ops 7 overall, and then some of the stuff that you're going to be doing at the later rounds to really lock in. And crucially, there is a calling card for getting to round 50 in the beta, and there's a Dark Ops, I think, for getting to round 50. So it's a really good idea to get this done, whether you're playing the beta or whether you're playing the full game. So let's start with the opening sort of couple of rounds. I think that if you're a veteran player, you might as well turn on the Rampage Inducer. It's not going to give you super sprinters round 2, so it's worth doing. And the most important thing, in my view, to start with, is to hit the box fairly early and get a gun that is higher rarity. Your loadout weapon in this is going to be lots less effective than it has been in the past because the cost of upgrading your loadout weapon is just much greater. So I like to spin the box pretty early and get a higher rarity weapon very quickly. Now, my preference is going to be to go for a blue weapon fairly soon. And if I've got greens and I don't like them, what I'll do is I'll recycle them at Chompy. So go to Chompy, melee him, put the guns into Chompy, and you'll get salvage back, and you might even get a ray gun as well. Now, you are going to be wanting to go for a ray gun as you get deeper into this strat, so keep your eye out for those ray guns, whether they come up in the box or from Chompy, but certainly in the early rounds, it's not a high priority. You just want a decent weapon that's going to carry you without worrying too much about masses of Pack-a-Punch upgrades and things like that. When you get to round 16, that's going to be your first bear, but before then, you're going to get several Ravager rounds, and these guys are going to steal your salvage and stuff off the floor, so just be careful if you're going into a special round that you do a quick lap and grab all the salvage. And also a tip that I always forget, to be honest, but is really worth doing is anytime you get extra lethal grenades or tomahawks or things like that, you should also be throwing those into Chompy to get extra salvage too. Now, Chompy is limited. It's, I think, 3 per round. That might reduce later in the rounds. I'm not sure. So if you've meleeed Chompy and already put stuff in his hole 3 times in a round, then you're just going to have to wait until the next round. And he's also not active on special rounds as well, just as a heads up. So let's say you are getting towards your round 16 and that bear is soon going to be approaching. You probably are going to want a Pack-a-Punch weapon at this point. By this point, I've probably spun the box several times, and if I'm lucky, I'll have gotten a purple rarity weapon, but if not, it's no big deal. You're generally going to have a lot more salvage in this game than you are points, so it's totally fine if you've got a blue weapon that you really love. You can upgrade that rarity at the arsenal machine, and then you can start Pack-a-Punching that before round 16 to make sure that you take out the bear really, really easily. Now, I wouldn't use the trap at all in the early rounds because you need to be farming points as best you can. And I also would not be buying any perks that are not absolutely essential. So I would start with Vulture Aid because it's going to mean that you earn more points from that point onwards. And then probably include things like Jug, Quick Revive, and Stam. But outside of those, I don't think there's any essentials in the very early rounds. I'd then move to Deadshot when you eventually have enough points, and I'd then probably add in Double Tap as a consideration, but even Double Tap is not crazy necessary for what we're going to be doing. I think Elemental is maybe actually a preference over Double Tap here, just because the elemental procs that you're going to get are going to help you more than Double Tap will, in my opinion. But later in the game, if you have ample points, not a problem at all. You can totally buy those extra perks. No big deal. The one thing I would tell you to avoid is Melee Macchiato because it will break Chompy. So only buy that once you're ready to say goodbye to Chompy's hole forever. Now, when you get that bear, if the bear itself is a threat that you're concerned about, something that I quite like to do is making sure that I've got stun grenades before I get to round 16. And that way I can basically perma-stun the bear. It's really effective, and it's going to mean that it exposes its tummy, and you can shoot that as one of its weak spots. You just need to shoot its 3 beehive-y weak spots, and that will open up crits underneath. And also, you don't have to shoot the bees that are going to chase you around. You can just run away and they'll despawn eventually. Like the ones that are on the ground as well will despawn. So it's not necessary for you to burn all your ammo shooting those extra parts of the bear, should you so desire. I also, during Chompy, would recommend avoiding activating the trap, just because that's going to mean that zombies are going to be continuing to spawn in while you're trying to take the bear down. And that's going to make it a lot harder. So I'd instead recommend just grouping up everything before you start working on the bear, and then crucially also using tomahawks to take out the bear's weak spots, and they'll one-hit each of the weak spots, and they'll make it a lot easier to take the bear down. Even when you've run out of weak spots, if you just use the tomahawks on the bear, it's going to chunk it in a big way, and it's going to be really effective for bear damage. So you've got past round 16. You're now working basically towards getting to round 30. I'd say that that's kind of your next milestone. In that time, you're going to start working on getting one of your guns leveled to Pack-a-Punch tier 2, and you're also going to be stockpiling salvage and trying to fill out some of your perks as well. Now, during this time, I wouldn't be arbitrarily spinning the box just to feed to Chompy, but I would instead be trying to feed Chompy tacticals, or rather lethals, sorry, wherever I possibly can. And also, if you do go down at any point, just remember you can craft 3 self-revives total from the crafting bench for 1500 salvage, I believe it is. Also, when the exfil turns on, don't exfil. I had someone in my chat say, how do I get past the round 11 glowing thing on my screen? And I was like, bro, just don't exfil. It's that simple. He thought he had to. So don't do that, and you can just keep progressing through those rounds. Now, I guess a caveat to this is if you're playing in co-op, you can have a teammate exfil without you, which is a pretty neat feature, so that is an option should you so desire. Now, let's say you do have a down, you lose some perks, and you start worrying about your points, right? Because this is a very common problem to have in farm survival. I think one of the best ways to get out of this hole is to buy a monkey bomb and use the monkey to get a bunch of kills that will give you loads of points rather than using the trap. And I'd also recommend just trying to use tomahawks as much as you possibly can. You basically want your bullets to be taking the zombies down, so fireworks is also a good option here for taking out groups of zombies. Now, as you're going through those rounds 16 to 30, you are probably going to start using the trap, especially as you get closer to 30. And the way your flow should work for this is you probably want to start around sort of towards the back of the farm, like in this sort of like corridory area is where I personally like to start it. And as soon as I see a zombie spawn, I start moving out of that area and opening up into the large hole of space that's in front of you in that sort of farm lobby. I'd zoom around there for a little bit. I'd hoard the zombies up just a little, and then I'd hit the trap. You don't need to hoard them for crazy long, but just for a few seconds, then hit the trap. That's going to bring all the zombies towards you, and it's going to mean that you can just sit on this structure and they'll all get distracted by the trap and killed. And as soon as the trap goes onto cooldown, you can grab salvage from it. You can grab your armor plates from it as well, all those sorts of things, and any extra tomahawks that drop as well. Now, one thing I'd be very cautious of is the fact that after the trap finishes, there will inevitably be a Ravager that spawns in and tries to steal some of the stuff from in front of the trap. So make sure that if you're not doing it immediately once the trap finishes, you move elsewhere, but then you move back again quite fast to grab your salvage before you proceed with whatever you're going to do. And generally, you're going to want to try to just group the zombies without absolutely slaying all of them out while you're waiting for the trap to come back online, because otherwise those zombies are going to spawn in front of you and just trip you over and cause you problems. So I'd tomahawk a couple, especially those that are in awkward positions, but otherwise, maybe proc a fireworks once or twice, but mainly just get ready to go back to the trap again. Now, a pro tip as you're doing this, if you are playing in a team and you do intend to have your teammates exfil, but you want to stay, this is actually from Hayden in my chat. You need to make sure you vote no on the exfil. If you don't vote no, it will still exfil you. Like, the game will still think you want to exfil, so just make sure that you vote no if that's happening and your teammates are planning to leave and you're planning to stay in the game. But assuming your teammates are sticking around or you're just playing solo, you're probably getting towards that round 30 mark now, right? And things are probably getting a bit more hectic. At this point, that's when I'd start spinning the box a little bit more frequently to try and get a ray gun or a ray gun Mark II. And I think when you get this, you want to get it to PAP tier 1 pretty much immediately. PAP tier 2 and PAP tier 3 are slightly lower priority, but you still obviously want that to happen at some point very soon. But PAP tier 1 is just like a no-brainer. And once you get to 29 or 30 or 31, you're gonna get a double bear spawn. So this is one where it's really nice to have that upgraded wonder weapon at that point because it's going to help you take out those bears a little bit more easily. But if not, bear in mind that you're going to get those bears at that round, and having some stims or some stun grenades ready in advance is going to make it a little bit safer for you. I would try to focus on one bear at a time, tomahawking it so that you can just deal with one at a time, basically. You'd rather have one bear to fight than two, and go slow. Don't take out tons of zombies, just focus the bears completely and making sure that you're also armoring up as you do this. Now, one exception to this, to the killing zombies thing that might be nice, is if you're finding that you're a bit low on armor and you're like, oh man, I'm stressing, I want to get armor, but I don't want to have to go to the buildables bench because it's just going to be really awkward to get out of there again and I'm scared. One thing that you can do is you can activate the trap, stand near it, and then obviously zombies will start going to the trap. They'll likely drop armor, and then as long as you're happy to maneuver around the newly spawning in zombies that will appear once those zombies die, you can kind of dodge and weave a little bit and then go back to the trap once it's finished to grab the extra armor that has dropped. And that just saves you having to actually go to the buildables bench. Now, your alternative would be to use Frenzied Guard and restore your armor that way. But bear in mind that the more times you use your field upgrade in Black Ops 7 Zombies, the harder it's going to be to get it back again. So you can't just infinite Frenzied Guard. That's not an option here. So only really do that if you're absolutely in a pinch. So assuming you've got to round 30 and you have maybe also decided that you're going to use Napalm Burst to help take those bears down, you're then going to start moving towards round 40, and round 40 is your next milestone in my opinion, because 40 is where you're going to start seeing Doppelghasts spawning in. My preference for these is, like, let's say you're on round 40 and a Doppelghast does spawn at the beginning of basically every round, like nearly every round, you're going to get a Doppel. I activate the trap straight away. That's going to lure in the zombies, but not the Doppel. And I'm then going to throw 2 Tomahawks at the Doppel, and usually it dies in 2 Tomahawks. You can also get a scenario where you need to shoot it a little bit as well, but generally it's going to die in 2 Tomahawks. It's going to make your life so easy, and you can then pick those Tomahawks up again once it's died as well. And because of those Tomahawks, I actually think that the Doppels at round 40 plus are the least of your concerns. I think you probably want to be much more wary of bears, to be frank. And you also want to be thinking about which weapons you're using for this. So if you don't have the wonder weapons yet, you really need to get on that. You need to be smart with your points, spending your salvage to help you buy things that are going to help you take down the zombies faster and earn points from it, as opposed to only using the trap. And you also presumably want to make sure that your weapon, like your bullet weapon, is good as well. I quite like the ARs. They're not super strong, but I think that they're decent. I know some people are a fan of the pistol, the Jaeger 45 pistol. Whacking that on with fireworks and using it with Tomahawks apparently is absolutely cracked, especially because when it's Pack-a-Punch, it's going to turn into kind of like a shotgun-y type situation. So that can be really cracked. But I've also seen a lot of people in my chat quite liking the LMGs, which might be surprising because maneuverability is so important. But when you Pack-a-Punch them, apparently they're a lot better. And so that might be worth a go. I'm not a huge fan, like I've said. Like, I would rather not do that personally. I find the LMGs are just not my playstyle, I suppose. But the Jaeger pistol, or just basically any of the ARs, maybe apart from the M8, because I'm personally not a huge fan of the M8. I think that they're all decent options. And I find that most of the time I'm honestly using Tomahawks anyway, so it doesn't make a crazy difference regardless. So now let's say you're getting to the 40 pluses and you're really needing to lock in. Make sure that you're using the trap straight away at the start of those Ravager rounds, because otherwise they are going to overwhelm you like crazy. This should basically always be your Ravager round strat. Hit the trap, get under it, grab your max ammo, move on. And I'd also say that you may want to start more reliably having stims in your inventory instead of any monkeys that you're using for point farming here, because those stims are going to save you in a pinch if you do run out of armor. Like, they're going to be essential for your survival. You don't want to get caught with your pants down, with no field upgrade, and with no stims, and like a monkey, because it's going to take infinite time to throw. It's going to suck. So a mental checklist of things to make sure that you've got at round 40 plus when you're going for that 50 target is you've finished up buying all of your perks, and you've been feeding Chompy the entire time as well. You've got triple 3-pack, and you're going to be starting to work towards getting that on both of your guns if you haven't already. And you're just really mentally going to be thinking about your points all the time. Like, if you're low on points, you're going to be thinking, how can I earn some points here? Tomahawks, monkey bombs, etc. Lethals. How am I going to make sure that I don't run out of points so I can't spend the trap anymore, right? Like, you need to be able to spin that trap. So be preventative with the way that you play. And at the end of the day, if you don't have a ray gun, do you really need PhD? If you're not using any bullet weapons really for any part of your strat, do you really need to bother with Wisp T? You probably don't. You can probably afford to wait on those until later in your game when you're a bit more points rich, and then you can buy those perks. But certainly early on, I would maybe just defer all of that stuff. Also, obviously, make sure you got tier 3 armor. Like, you're not getting to round 50 or round 100 or whatever without tier 3, so make sure you got that. And for field upgrade, the later the game goes on, the more I really, really love Frenzied Guard. I know some people are big healing aura enjoyers, but I'm a Frenzied Guard enjoyer personally. That will slightly change once Ether Shroud is unlocked. If you've got Ether Shroud unlocked, then I'm a big Ether Shroud fan. But yeah, certainly in the beta and certainly at the lower levels, Frenzied Guard, in my opinion, is a cook. And so that brings us to our sort of modus operandi for these final few rounds to get to round 50, right? Start the round, like I said, back of the farm area, just sort of minding your business. Then run through to that middle area where there's loads of space. You'll have loads of zombies that spawn behind you, so it'll be nice and clear. Run around a little bit, hit that trap, get it going. The trap will last for however long it lasts. Take out those zombies. Take out the doppels that spawn alongside you with tomahawks at the beginning of that round. Or don't hit the trap and just start working on the bears straight away. But then once the bears are down, start working on the zombies, obviously. And then just run around, waiting for the trap to come off cooldown, and rinse and repeat. It's a very, very simple strat on this map. But so far, I found this really effective. I died on 69 on day one because obviously I got to 69, but I'm confident you could go like a lot further with it as well if you were just a bit more locked in than I was that day. So that's going to wrap up my high round tips, tricks, and strategies for today, but we'll obviously be posting more of these guides through the entire year of Black Ops 7 Zombies. So if you want a different strat to run that is going to be a very different sort of style of gameplay, then make sure you're subscribed and you'll see that in your sub box very soon. That's all from me for now, folks. Bye for now.